he's just not that into me.
Okay, who the hell am I? Who am I? What do I want out of this life? This
Without
one
somebody
life?
by my side.
Yes. What does it look like if I never meet somebody?
I've been in a relationship with myself for the last 5 years.
Oh.
Yeah, but I'm like...
And how is it?
I'm bang on, yeah. I'm going to marry myself now at some point, if I could.
You should. Today we are talking about the elephant in the group chat, the chaos of on again, off again relationships and what that does to you and your pals. Now, luckily, psychologist Louize Carroll is here to give us a hand. But firstly, the lovely Doireann O'Connor.
Yay.
Breakups can be hard.
They can.
And absolute misery.
Yeah.
Right?
All of the above, 100%. Yeah. Whether it's romantic or platonic.
I think the only way it can be easy is if you didn't like the person. If you aren't really into that person.
Yeah. And I think, don't you always kind of hate them at the end? No?
Okay.
Is that just me?
Might be just you. It's always a very simple reason. I remember I broke up with a boyfriend and I used to make all these excuses. Oh, he's going through something. That's why he's not calling me all the time. Or, he's out with his friends and that's why he didn't pop over when he said he would. Or I'd make all these excuses.
Yeah.
And I never forget, my best friend never said anything but took me to the cinema to see this movie that Jennifer Aniston was in. And it was called He's Just Not That Into You. Do you remember that movie?
100%. Yeah.
And it was all these excuses like he's not, taking you for dinner. He's not calling around. He's leaving, straight after sex. He's doing this. Yeah. And it's one line, one simple reason. He's just not that into you. And I remember watching it going, he's just not that into me.
Yeah, it's mind blown and it's the most heartbreaking thing ever. But as you say, one of my best friends, Emma, her husband, always says, if you're confused, he's just not that into you. That is the
or
end.
She's not that into you.
Yeah, they're just... So you'll know. If they're into you, you'll know.
You'll know. You'll feel it. But breakups are so tricky because it's hard to let go. I find it's very hard to let go. And I was that person in my 20s that would unload on my friends, especially with one relationship because I kept going back because I could not let go of that relationship. I was kind of addicted to it in a weird way. So I'd keep going back and keep going around in circles with my friends, telling them all the ins and outs and all the dirt on what went wrong and what happened. And now I'm thinking about it, it must have been very unfair on my pals.
Yeah, I feel like I've been on both sides. I've been the person that's like, please just tell me what to do. And then I've been the person as well that's like, oh my God, we've been through this, But I feel like sometimes they just want you to listen. I've been the person that's like, break up with them. And then you're sitting at the wedding being like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you guys. Forget everything that I told you beforehand. There's that awkwardness. So I feel like I touched the fire, told her to break up, and then realised after it that it actually put more distance between me and that friend than it did her and the person, when all she really wanted was a shoulder to cry on and someone to just listen. So I've learned listening as well.
How long do you think getting over a breakup should take? Do you think there's a certain amount of time or does it depend on the relationship?
I feel like when I was younger, I was like a serial relationship person. I just jumped from one to the next and been like, oh my God, I love everybody. And then I loved someone probably a bit too much. And then that, found it very hard to leave. And I think that's after that breakup, I was like, I need to love myself now for a while. And I feel like I've been in a relationship with myself for the last 5 years.
Aww.
Yeah, but I'm like...
And how is it?
I'm bang on, yeah. I'm going to marry myself now at some point, if I could.
You should. Be a lot easier and cheaper. But there has to be ways to be a compassionate friend when your friend's going through a breakup. A compassionate friend without giving the wrong advice or, like you said, putting that distance between you and your friend if you're telling them stuff that they probably don't want to hear.
Yeah.
There has to be. Should we find out?
I'd love to.
Let's do it. So before things heat up, a little love for our sponsor, Kildare Village. We're all for sparks flying when the curtains are closed. But sure, look, it's no harm to take yourself out for a bit of excitement too. With over 100 boutiques, including 60 you won't find anywhere else in Ireland, a visit to Kildare Village is shopping that's so Irish. And if that wasn't enough, here's something special. We're giving 5 lucky listeners the chance to each win a pair of tickets to an exclusive live recording of the Just Between Us podcast with me, Jennifer Zamparelli, in the beautiful surroundings of Kildare Village. So, you can bring your favourite +1 along for a stylish night out. Head over to independent.ie for your chance to enter, and good luck. Okay, so Louise, we are going to talk all things breakup. The good, the bad, the ugly. Mm. I mean, when I looked at this, I thought, oh my God, I've done so many things wrong. I've made so many mistakes in my day, in past relationships and past breakups. But I didn't. There wasn't a handbook given to me of how to do breakup, right?
Mm-hmm. There is no handbook.
No.
And there are, we talk about rules, we talk about what's the right thing to do. And all of that is so objective and doesn't take into account your feelings or what you've just been through or what you've experienced or what you're sort of left with, what are the consequences of what you've gone through. It's really hard to separate the rule book out from where you're at emotionally, because remember, after a breakup, your nervous system is out of whack for a long time, for weeks, months maybe, depending on the length of the relationship or the impact of it.
Yeah.
So real book, no, but certain things that you can do to minimise the torture you kind of put yourself through.
Okay, well, let's talk about that first of all. And this is especially for anybody going through it at the moment. So what is the first step people should take in the aftermath of a breakup?
Well, again, it depends on the type of ending. Because, I've worked with people who have been in 6-month relationships and are devastated versus people who've been in 20 years of marriage and have kids and a house. And it's very different to what that looks like at the end of that relationship.
Will we talk about the relationships that have no ties, so to speak, like kids, dog, house, those relationships first of all?
Yeah. One of the things I think that probably gets trotted out the most, because there's a legitimate good reason to it, is minimize contact. And that's really hard to do. If you've had somebody in your life who's been that nervous system regulator, who's been the person that has seen you and made you feel valuable, and maybe sometimes made you feel worthy if you've struggled with self-worth before, it's really difficult then to cut them out and have a complete absence of that.
So are you saying that we can't be friends with an ex? No friendship there?
I think the rush often, and this is also to minimise the pain of the breakup, the rush is to say, okay, let's be friends. Because it's like this little bridge between saying goodbye and actually cutting off completely. So it softens the end. And yet it's the thing that keeps you kind of plugged in.
Okay.
So people rush to say, let's be friends. And we don't actually have to arrive at that conclusion that quickly. It can be something that arrives as a natural consequence over time when both people are more emotionally regulated by themselves. Then it's a real decision to be friends.
That's the hardest thing to do. Breaking that contact and saying, okay, I'm not going to see that person. I'm not going to check their Instagram. I'm not going to call them when something happens. And it's not linear, is it? Like, it is a bumpy road because things happen in your life, and then your go-to would be to call that person that has been with you over the last couple of years or whatever, and you want to tell them the good news and the bad news. And that's a really difficult thing to do. Is there any technique, or is it just cold turkey? Is that it? There's no good way of doing it or easy way of doing it?
I don't think there's any easy way of doing it. I think this is the whole essence of a breakup. It's fucking painful. It hurts. And it brings up all your own insecurities to the surface again, because you're dealing with a loss. You're dealing with a loss. There's no way to smooth over that loss unless you're avoiding it. And if you're avoiding it, then you're going to probably run slap bang into the same issues again. Yeah. So actually the breakup is this opportunity to look at what ended and to look at why, to look at the choices maybe inside of that. It doesn't mean the choices were always wrong, by the way. It can be an evolution of your own character. That can be what brings about the end of a relationship.
And I suppose it's baby steps as well, isn't it? It's like, get to midnight, do it all over again.
Yeah.
Don't pick up that phone, and distraction is great as well. But what about talking about a breakup? Is that therapeutic? Is it good to keep talking to your friends about a breakup and talking to your loved ones?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, 100%. And I think all of us, I'm going to make that assumption, have been in the position where we talk about it at length. We talk about it to death sometimes. I mean, I used to go to my own particular therapy. My God, love her, because I would show up week after week and I would tell the same story over and over and over again till I got sick of myself, hearing myself say the same thing. And when I realised I was sick of hearing myself say the same thing, then I knew I was ready to leave it behind. But, I paid for her service. So I could walk away feeling like, okay, I didn't just emotionally dump all over everybody in my life. And there is a thin line between those two things. That said, friends are there for you through thick and thin.
Yeah.
And yes, you don't want to emotionally dump all over them, but this is what we do for each other as well at the same time, especially in moments of pain.
When a relationship ends, you go from having someone beside you all the time, maybe, you're just joined at the hip, you live with them, to suddenly sleeping alone. What does that absence actually do to you?
It reorganizes your nervous system, honestly. You're having to get used to not being co-regulated by another person. And by that I mean, like what you just mentioned, something happened today and the first person I want to tell is that person. And now I have to withhold. And now this is stuck inside me. And the rush to maybe tell somebody else doesn't feel the same because it's not the same dynamic as you're used to. Mm-hmm. So you're having to reorganize the way you are in the world, who you talk to, the way you talk to them, and not deriving your sort of emotional hit from that person. That you first are learning again to be with yourself. Which is that most of my work is how do we pay attention to the relationship with ourselves?
Okay.
So that when we end up maybe after a breakup, that we can be alone, that we can go to dinner alone, that we can sit in a cafe alone, and for it not to be a catastrophe, right? Or some sort of indictment on us because we're alone.
Is that the biggest thing you have to work on when people come to see you, after a breakup, is, sitting with themselves and spending time alone?
I think it's what they make that mean, as opposed to the actual act of being alone. It's what it means to them. And all of this is the meaning we make. It's the meaning we make of the relationship we had, the meaning we make of the end, and the meaning that we make now that we're on our own. Which is why it can be so scary to leave a relationship, because we might make a meaning that that's the only one we'll ever have. Mm-hmm. And we'll never have anything as good as that again. So we stay in the familiar rather than extract ourselves and be open to the possibility that something more ripe for us might exist. And actually we might be more happy, more content, more fulfilled inside of something else. But we don't know that because it's invisible as yet. So we stay with what's familiar and we place our worth inside of what's familiar. And then when we don't have that anymore, we feel this deep loss. And that's what I work with people on, is the meaning you make of being on your own. What does that mean to you? And can we shift that? Can we kind of loosen the lid on what you believe to be true about that, so that you can actually potentially see what your life could look like?
It's so difficult, isn't it, really? Because society is so driven towards you being even ads on the telly, even getting a mortgage, buying a house, doing this, having a happy relationship. It's always like a heterosexual, more often than not, relationship is shown to be the absolute epitome. And, that is what happiness is. And that's what's going to make you really, really happy. But I often hear people say, I wasn't looking for a relationship when I was just spending time with myself and doing things on my own. That's when that person came along. So we need to put more emphasis on working on ourselves, being alone, having a fulfilling life on our own.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I know maybe it sounds like a cliche, but that was my story as well. A series, and I mean decades of really challenging relationships, and not because they were challenging necessarily, some, but also because I didn't know my ass from my elbow really through those times. And then getting to the point of going, oh, hang on, I'm the common denominator in everything that I've experienced so far in my life. That's not to put blame. That's not about blame. That's about understanding the way I show up in my life and the way I show up in my relationships. And so spending some years going, okay, who the hell am I? Who am I? What do I want out of this life? This
Without
one
somebody
life.
by my side.
Yes. What does it look like if I never meet somebody? What will my life look like? And can I make it a life that I want to live, that I'm excited about? And truth, honestly, that is what I focused on for, I would say, the guts of 3 years. And that's what happened. And just like your friend, when you feel completely content, like it does not matter, you will live it, you know you're going to live a good life, regardless of somebody. That's when usually you do meet somebody.
You said it there, you're making the same mistake over and over again. And why do people repeat that pattern so often?
There are many reasons.
Not going to therapy is one.
Well, I mean, that's the surface level reason. Did you go and sort out your shit?
Yeah.
Right? And did you look at the thing that you keep being drawn back to? Because we are drawn to the same pattern. We're drawn to the same loop. We're drawn to the same attachment style. And the reason is because we keep going back to it in an attempt to get a different ending.
Okay.
So we are drawn to what's familiar. It activates us in the exact same way. We call it chemical attraction. And we hope and work so hard to get a different outcome. And it doesn't work like that, of course. And it doesn't work until we change, not necessarily who we're attracted to, but what we will accept. That's the difference.
Okay.
I often get asked, can you change who you're attracted to? But if I'm just attracted to these people who are emotionally unavailable, then what can I do? But it's not that. It's what you will tolerate inside of a relationship. That's the piece that keeps the loop and the wheels turning on those old patterns.
So let's say you're going through this. You're going through a bit of a messy breakup and you break your own no contact rule. Have you completely ruined it? Because people do go back and maybe have some, breakup sex, or they meet for coffee or whatever. Have you taken 10 steps backwards there?
No, I would never say that, really.
Okay.
I think one of the things, and again, I would say even personally speaking, to get curious about is, why am I making this choice? What am I looking to get out of this thing that I'm about to do? When I'm about to pick up the phone and see if I can meet my ex again, am I doing it fully cognizant of what I'm doing? Or am I being completely avoidant and just tapping away and then meeting them and then having this overwhelming regret? You're not taking 10 steps back if you're staying intentional and deliberate about what you're doing. And you're fully aware, hang on, I know I'm walking into something that's going to cause more pain and I'm still going to do it. I've been there. But are you connected to the truth of it, or are you lying to yourself about it? That's the difference. And you're not taking 10 steps back if you're connecting to the truth.
I do find, a lot of breakups, they're just so complicated because lives are entangled, aren't they? And you have the same friend group and, you're good friends with the mother or the sister or whatever. So should you break contact with all those people as well, would you say?
I would say, at least initially.
Wow.
It is the cleanest, I would say the psychologically cleanest way to do it.
Okay.
Initially. And that's, again, because if we keep being exposed to the same familiar experiences that we had, the same familiar environment, we keep getting activated and the emotional attachment stays. But remember, if we're splitting up, if we're separating, then the whole goal is to be emotionally independent human beings. And then when we come back together in friendship or we meet the family again, it's not from that place of dependency or trying to get something out of it or to feel renewed worth because of them again. We're coming on our own terms, standing on our own 2 feet, as opposed to leaning on them for comfort.
So that old saying of time is a great healer is actually true when it comes to breakups.
I always call time an ingredient. It's not just something that's sort of happening in the background while we get on with our lives. It's an ingredient. It's part of the equation to heal or to recover or to get through anything. It's a necessary part of the evolution. Again, when I work with people, you can learn all the terms in the world, Jen. You can go through everything. You can have all the insights. You can recite books on attachment. And I've met so many people who can do that. They can, down to a T, they can describe why they do the things they do in their lives. And nothing changes.
And they keep doing them.
Yeah. Because it's not about your knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah, you said it before, because you have all the emotions that come with a breakup. Yeah. It's a minefield, really. So we would love to hear what you think about Just Between Us. Your feedback helps us make the podcast even better, and it only takes a minute. As a thank you, you'll be entered into a draw to win a €500 one-for-all voucher. All you have to do is head over to mypodcastfeedback.com and enter the code US. Thanks so much for listening and for helping. Okay, so let's talk about co-parenting in a breakup, because that can be so messed up in terms of, you know, try not to affect the child or the children in the process. So what is the best way to go about that? Because you can't do the avoidant thing, or you can't cut them out of your life because, you know, they're the parent to your children or your child. So how do you manage that?
And probably one of the most challenging things to do is this, actually. Because again, as we said, you have the emotional entanglement. And if there's betrayal involved, right, that makes it even more complicated, as opposed to a love that just fizzled out between the two people. If there's betrayal, then you have somebody who is deeply, deeply hurt and wounded, and still has the challenge of now having to restructure and organise that relationship in order to care for the little ones and in order to be there and to be ethical and moral and responsible in terms of how you collaborate on parenting. So you're moving from being lovers into collaborators about how to raise these little people. That's so tough. It is probably one of the toughest things you'll do. And the challenge and the reason it's so tough is because there needs to be a separation between these deep feelings and these legitimate feelings of being wounded and betrayed, and not leaking that onto the children.
Yeah.
And not colouring their perception of the other person, because they're entitled to their own relationship with the partner, with their parent, whoever that is. That's clean. That's based on their own experience, one-to-one with them, not on that's been filtered through your own lens of hurt. And that's where it gets really tricky. And that's when often the couple might even end up in therapy, even when they are separated.
Well, I suppose they need some kind of mediator. You know, if the relationship is broken down for whatever reason and emotions are involved and children are involved, I think does there need to be someone there to go, okay, these are the rules, you know, because it's very hard for the people involved in the relationship to set them out and be fair, I would say.
I think it's a great idea to have a third party. I mean, even if it's one session where it's helping restructure this new arrangement. What are the times that you're going to be meeting? In what way are you going to communicate? How is that going to happen? What are the limits of communication? So what we're looking for in those situations are consistency, predictability, and emotional, not detachment, but civility. And how can we have those three things in a collaboration to raise these little people without letting and also, by the way, having support for ourselves outside of that, outside of the relationship, to cope with this new arrangement and to cope with our own grieving as well of the loss of that marriage or the relationship or partnership or whatever it was.
Let's talk about the people around this breakup, you know, the friends, the sisters, the brothers, the mothers, who get an earful and a blow-by-blow account sometimes of everything that's gone wrong in the relationship and how people are feeling. So you mentioned earlier, it is healthy for someone to talk to their friends about a breakup, of course. But when is enough enough? I know I've been that person many years ago when I kept making the same mistake and going back to that relationship. And I swear my friends were, you know, sick to death of me talking about it, of me making the same mistakes. I'm sure friends can get fatigued and there can be strain on relationships in that sense, right?
Yeah. I mean, there is. It's really hard to be a friend and love your friend and see them continuously make the decision to get back inside of a unhealthy dynamic and to then see the cycle where they get back in. It's great for a couple of months and then they're completely distraught again, and then they come back to you and you're actually part of it. You're part of the cycle that happens. And you realize that you're part of the cycle.
And we've all been in that situation where our friend has come over, has given out shit about their partner. We've told them they're a bastard. They've broken up with said bastard. And then they're walking down the aisle, 2 years later to that bastard. And we have to grin and go, I didn't mean it. I was only joking at the time or whatever.
So nice.
We've all been there. So I've learned to keep my mouth shut as well, on the other hand. But there has to be, like, where's the middle ground there, or is there?
What's challenging is that you love your friend.
Yep.
And they will tell you the story and you'll go, oh my God, what a prick.
Yep.
Oh my God, that's awful. I can't believe he said that. I can't believe it. But remember, as much as we love our friends, we're also only getting one part of the dance. And there is another part of the dance. In order to have this dance happening, there are two people going into it with their own stance, with their own way of being, with their own way of responding. Now, and I'm saying this, by the way, outside of the bounds of abuse or actual toxicity. That's different.
Yes,
that's completely different, to be very clear about that. But inside of a relationship that has its ups and downs, that has unhealthy behaviour at times, then there is a dance happening and two people are part of that dynamic. And if we get into the position of managing the outcomes, and sometimes as a very close friend, we feel like we have to manage it because our friend looks distressed. So we come in with all of these suggestions about what they should do and how they should leave, and don't put up with that shit, don't tolerate it. And we're riled up. And then they go off and they get back into the relationship and we're like, what? They didn't take our advice and now it becomes about us.
Yeah, I read an article once, it's called compassion fatigue.
Yeah, that's a thing.
It's exhausted. It's exhausting, rather. And but how do we avoid that without losing a friend? Because it's just this cycle, isn't it, that keeps going round and round and round with some people.
We get into the state of having compassion fatigue because or some part of us believes it's our job to manage it.
Okay.
If we stay inside of the friendship, not in a management capacity, rather in a, what do you need from me right now? As opposed to, what are we going to do? What's going to happen next? Now you're in it. Now you're in the cycle itself. But if you're here going, God, this sounds really hard again for you. This is the cycle. What's going to be helpful during this from me? I find this tough. It's hard to watch, but I love you and I'm here.
What do you think I should do? I hate that question. But what do you think I should do?
And that's the same thing as being kind of co-opted into sort of outsourcing the next decision. And so it's part of our own challenge to stay grounded in that. It's not for me to say. You've got to make this decision yourself and I'm here for you, whatever you make.
Why do people keep going back when they know it's a complete disaster then? Or why do we?
Yeah, we.
I've been there.
It's collective.
Why do you think we do that?
I think, again, once it's easy to point at people and go, what are you doing? Why did you do that? The writing's on the wall. Can you not see? And for everyone else outside of the forest, we're like, what in hell? But for us, when we've been in that situation, and for the person themselves, you're not looking at it like that. And often you're still committed to the original fantasy of the relationship, which is the way it felt in those first few months, that first year. And you saw the absolute best. You saw the potential of this person. You saw what they could be, and you probably filled in the gaps for the long-term picture of it. And so the person keeps reaching for that fantasy. And they're more fixated on getting the fantasy back than on actually looking at the current behaviours now and incorporating that into the reality now.
So really they're venting. They're not really looking. If they keep going back and this is a pattern, they just want to, are they just looking to vent? I mean, they're not taking on any advice. I mean, how do we still show them compassion without completely abandoning them?
Yeah, and this is tricky. This genuinely is tricky. And what I want to say about that first, are they venting? No. It might land like venting, truthfully, yes. But remember, this is something different. This isn't a knowledge thing. This isn't, I can see why this is wrong. And I, eyes wide open and walking back into it. Mm-hmm. This is something deeper. And it functions like an addiction in many ways. which is we keep trying to get the same needs met and we keep hoping for a different outcome, and we don't want to give up on it because we are so scared that if I don't have this, I'll have nothing. So we grip even tighter. Again, it's not rational. If it was rational, we wouldn't be in this situation most of the time. It's coming from a deep emotional place. It's coming maybe from a lack of self-worth, which is again why a lot of the work is focusing on how are you doing with yourself? Mm-hmm. How do you see yourself? If you're not in this relationship, how do you view yourself? Do you think that you've lost worth somehow? Do you believe that you've worth inherently just because you're a human being? Or is it dependent on your achievement or what you've done in your life or where you're at? There's so many complex reasons as to why people go back. But as the friend, I think sometimes what can be difficult is the friend then, that dynamic itself becomes unhealthy. Because if the friend sort of projects care, but actually if you don't do what I'm saying and you've done the opposite, well, that's not really care. That's kind of judgment disguised as care.
Yeah.
And we can often ask questions that are judgmental disguised as care.
So what are some things a friend can say in a situation like that? If their friend keeps coming to them talking about arguments and things that are happening in the relationship, what are the tools that friend needs to still be a friend, you know, without getting compassion fatigue or being judgmental or giving the wrong advice or giving any advice because they don't want it really?
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah. I think the first point was the other one, which was avoid getting into the management of it.
Okay.
You can even physically stay back. You can physically close your eyes and think, okay, I'm not getting sucked into this emotional dynamic.
And what would be a line they could use in that? Silence? Probably. Would that be a good?
Honesty is a beautiful thing in this situation.
Right.
Compassionate honesty.
Okay.
Which looks like, I don't agree with what you're doing. I think you're making the wrong choice. But I'm here. I'm not going. I'm not leaving you. Versus somebody, and I've seen this so many times, a friend who goes, I can't believe you've done this again. I can't believe you haven't taken my advice again. You keep coming back asking for it. I give it to you. You ignore it. And then that friend pulls back and shuts down and withdraws. That's abandonment.
Yeah.
And actually that friendship dynamic mimics the unhealthy dynamic perhaps in the relationship itself. And so the friendship becomes the unhealthy dynamic. And again, it's disguised as care, only because I love you, but actually you've abandoned your friend in that moment. But if you can be clear and honest, I don't like this. I don't also want to get into this dynamic where we only talk about it. I'm here for you if something really challenging happens and you really need something. But otherwise, I need our friendship to exist outside of the cycle that keeps happening with your partner. And therapy is a good idea.
Okay. I don't think we realise the toll a breakup takes on someone.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just, there's so much to unpack and to deal with. Mm-hmm. And when you're finally, is it baby steps with people, first of all? Is it, like you said earlier, going for that lunch on your own, going for that dinner on your own, then building up to doing things on your own?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Baby steps are always a good thing. Or some people just throw themselves into travel, or they make a big leap. But you don't have to do that either. But the first thing is, I think you mentioned it earlier, get up and have a shower. Make your breakfast.
Get out of the bed.
That's good. That's fine. If that's all you're doing for the first few days, the first week, couple of weeks, great. Listen to yourself. And I think what's interesting over the years as well, even again, personally speaking, is paying attention to what's happening inside of you when you're going through this pain. What's your mind saying about it? What's the voice? How do you speak to yourself? How do you treat yourself? This is one of the things I noticed, which is actually what prompted me to move completely into relationships in my work, which was the eviscerating inner critic that existed inside my head when something would go wrong in my life. And that could have been a relationship. I would turn on myself. And that started to become really evident. And so when I started to be more curious about what was happening rather than getting caught up in the swamp of completely eviscerating myself, that's when I started to actually shift how I related to myself. And that changed everything. That sounds like a big statement, but that's the honest truth. It changed everything. Is
there a fine line between complete avoidance as to what's happening and cutting that person out? Where's the fine? You know what I mean? Because you can just ignore everything that's going on with you. But it's so important to just, like you mentioned there, sit with yourself, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, I actually think avoidance is the modern day disorder because there's never been as many ways to distract yourself. Any fleeting discomfort in the body, bang, the phone's up.
Yeah.
Or whatever, anything, any headline we're looking at, Netflix is on. You know, we look at Netflix as I'm finally resting, but we're not. We're still being distracted. Unless we're actually sitting with the discomfort and being in it, we're not actually paying attention to what's happening inside of us. And because there's so many ways to divert and leave the discomfort, well, then we're not actually building our ability to be in the world. Again, a big statement, but we weaken our ability to be in the world when we stop taking on the challenge of sitting with uncomfortable emotions. It's the essence of relationships, is being able to sit in discomfort and not leave. That's so powerful. Can you dare to rock the boat? Can you say what you think? And can you stay in the game at the same time? Rather than, oh, I can't do this, I don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah.
And that is creeping a lot into relationships.
And how long after a breakup should you get back out there, so to speak? Start dating again? Is there a time frame? What do you think?
No, I would say there's not a time frame actually for that one, because it's wholly dependent on how connected you are to yourself, how ready you feel. And I've seen both. I've seen people wait years. I've seen people get back the week later, they're back on apps and they're dating. And again, the question I would ask is, are you avoiding being with yourself? Are you avoiding discomfort by getting back in, focusing on somebody else again? Which is, hello, it's a perfect distraction from yourself to be focused on someone else and then to be receiving their warmth and their affection and their attention. Lovely, great, amazing. Everything that allows us to avoid what feels a bit shitty.
And lastly, what happens when your friend gets back with that person who you've, had all those conversations about, and you're sitting at the dinner table with that couple? What then?
This is a challenge to be magnanimous. Remember, and this has always helped me actually, remember there are two people inside of that dynamic. And you might have heard some shitty things about that person. And I think one of the things I always say to people is, what would happen if we flipped judgment to curiosity? Judgment is a foregone conclusion. Judgment, we have our feelings about the thing. We have an outcome. We've already decided if we're making judgments. And that's impacting how we're now relating. So we're going to be relating from a side eye. We're not really engaging. We're sort of maybe making snide comments. So it's not going to go well. There's not going to be good outcomes in that relationship dynamic across the table at dinner. But if we come from a curious place, which is, I've heard all these things, but I'm going to stay curious and open, because you're choosing him again or he's choosing her again. So there has to be, I'm going to stay open to why that is. And I'm going to see if I can extract some more information about who this person is and be open to that. And that can keep you close to your friend, as well as removing judgment, which, by the way, a friend gets compelled to defend against, and it probably will push them more into the relationship.
That's
Curiosity.
great advice. Very difficult to do. And if you can do that, you're amazing. But that is, wow, that is something, if we could all master that, the world would be a better place for sure. Okay, so someone is listening to this episode and they're going through a breakup. It's very fresh. What piece of advice would you give them right now?
Go, so gently. Your system is shattered. This isn't just a reorganization of your life. Your emotional system is shattered. Your nervous system is shattered. And going gently is the only way. Some people do the opposite, right? But it's the same. It's avoidance again. There's always something to incorporate or integrate into our relationship with ourselves after a breakup. I remember having difficult breakups and thinking, there's nothing I'll ever learn from this. This is so cruel and horrible. And yet, one of those in particular was the reason I created everything that I created. It led to my own investigation into myself and the way I spoke to myself and everything beyond that. It created the biggest shift in my life. And so there's all this potential for learning about yourself in that space of pain. We're so used to talking about positivity and empathy and good things. And that's wonderful. And I'm all there for that. But there's equally a huge amount of powerful stuff that we can glean from the shit times, from the pain. And actually, it'll deepen our ability to relate to other people, actually, if we stay with it. And Khalil Gibran says, the deeper sorrow carves into your soul, the more joy you can contain.
Great advice. Louise, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Thank you.
A massive thank you to the brilliant Louize Carroll for unmuting the group chat we all need to have. And of course, earlier, my thanks to Darren O'Connor. I'm Jennifer Zamparelli, and thanks for listening to Just Between Us. Now, if you love this episode, do us a massive favour. Hit follow, leave us a 5-star review. Sure, go on. And share this with that friend who desperately needs to hear it. You know exactly which one I'm talking about.